Well, good morning to everyone, and welcome. We're here today to announce a lawsuit that was filed this morning against the state of Ohio for violations of the City of Columbus's Home Rule Authority. It was exactly 1 year ago, almost today, which is amazing the way the time works and how time flies, that we stood in the room, the mayor and I and others, and many of you with Moms Demand Action, I think, were there as well, to address what we think is an important issue in the City of Columbus, and that is to do what we can to curtail gun violence in our community. And it was in our response under Ohio Revised Code 9.68 that we narrowly tailored a law, like we took painstakingly significant efforts to narrowly tailor a law to make sure that we acted within what the state of Ohio would allow cities to do. And in this instance, it was to ban bump stocks in our community. And it was also, to which I think is about as most common sense as it comes, to keep guns out of the hands of domestic violent convicts, people that actually have a conviction for domestic violence who are not allowed to possess a firearm under federal law, but are allowed to possess a firearm under state law. And we were closing that gap, not to focus on guns, but to focus on criminality. Well, in the intervening time, right after we passed that common sense gun regulation, the Ohio House of Representatives passed or introduced House Bill 228, which attempted to preemptively block efforts like ours to, like cities, to pass sensible gun regulations. And it was about last year as well that I stood with State Representative David Leland over at the State House, claiming that this was an affront to a city's ability to govern themselves, the most basic principle of Ohio constitutional law as it relates to our relationship with the state. House Bill 228 was passed by the General Assembly, I believe in the lame duck session. It was vetoed by then Governor Kasich, and even at the time, Governor Kasich admitted that this would be a violation of Ohio's home rule authority for cities to be able to regulate itself. But the General Assembly overrode the governor's veto, and as a result, House Bill 228 will take effect on March 28th. House Bill 228 eviscerates the very basic principle of home rule. It's a blatant attempt to crush our authority as local leaders to pass laws that address the needs of our citizens in our community. It's home rule and guns today. It can be home rule and the environment tomorrow, home rule and land use. It doesn't matter what the issue is. Cities have the ability to govern themselves and think and do what is best for our citizens. That's the basic tenet of local control and representative democracy. And by the way, the converse is true. It's incumbent upon us too, even if we philosophically agree with something the state is doing, we have a duty to protect our home rule interests to make sure that cities are able to control and govern themselves. We just recently won a case as it relates to public utilities and the environment where a judge struck down a provision of the Ohio Revised Code that prevented cities from maintaining areas around its watershed to ensure that we have safe drinking water. We recently won that case. And the reason why we actually did that case was, again, to protect home rule, to protect our ability to govern ourselves. I can't help but think of what has commonly been a Republican principle that you hear oftentimes out of Washington, that states know best. Let states control. States know best. But for some reason, the buck stops with the state, and it doesn't pass down to the municipalities, where mayors and city attorneys and city council members are in the trenches every day working with groups like Moms Demand Action to ensure that we are providing our citizens, through representative democracy, what our citizens demand and what we need to do to govern ourselves as a city. So today we're filing this lawsuit to make sure that we're preserving home rule or preserving local control on this issue, and making sure, as it relates to domestic violence convicts, as it relates to bump stocks, and it relates to other gun issues, that we're able to control what's best for the city of Columbus, to maintain peace in our neighborhoods, to make sure every kid can grow up without gun violence affecting them. Because at the basic essence of home rule is, what's good for Columbus may not be good where I'm from in Belpre, Ohio, or in Toledo, but like every city must decide for itself what is best. The local control is so important. So as we proceed today in this litigation, we appreciate everyone's support. And at this time, I want to bring forward our great mayor, Mayor Andy Ginther.
Good morning, and thank you, City Attorney Klein, for all of your work and advocacy. Thanks to Rochelle O'Connor and all of her colleagues for Moms for Action who are here with us, and thanks to all of you for coming out this morning. Almost 1 year ago to date, we stood here, the City Attorney, the Council President, neighborhood and community leaders, to announce some very, very basic, bipartisan, common sense solutions and steps to reduce gun violence in our neighborhoods. Here are a couple of statistics that demonstrate how important our work in gun safety is. 14 of the 20 homicide victims this year were between the ages of 22 and 40. It's important to remember that these just weren't statistics and victims. They were a son or a daughter, a mother or father, a neighbor, a friend. In 2018, 74 of the 102 homicides were committed by firearms. This year, 17 of 20 were committed. It's 85%. We are committed to reducing violence in Columbus. We've had some initial success with the comprehensive neighborhood safety strategy that approaches violence on all fronts: protection, intervention, and prevention. The implementation of ShotSpotter, our gunfire detection system, has shown promise as well. In just over a month, more than 83 reports of gunfire have been sent to the Columbus Division of Police, and 5 arrests have been made for gun-related crimes as a direct result. We know we must fight gun violence from the legislative side, and that's why a year ago, the city proposed local action to close the gap between state and federal weapons laws, protect all victims of domestic violence, and keep dangerous weapons out of neighborhoods. The city attorney very articulately and artfully talked about all the legal issues. But here's the bottom line. The state of Ohio is gutting gun safety laws in Columbus, period. For whatever reason, state and federal leaders have lacked the will or the courage to do what they know is right and will save lives. The NRA and the Buckeye Firearms Association may run the state government, but they don't run the city of Columbus. The people of Columbus do. And we will continue to fight for our right to put in place common sense, bipartisan gun safety laws that will save lives, period. We will do it in our neighborhoods. We will do it in the state legislature. And as the city attorney said this morning, we also will fight them in courts. Our families and our neighborhoods need us focused on solving problems and making their lives better. Ohio's currently broad gun laws were made even more expansive and favorable to the gun lobby. House Bill 228 also violates the Ohio Constitution's home rule provision that allows local governments to pass ordinances specific to the residents' needs without the threat of intrusion from the state. We know that safety is a top priority for the residents of Columbus, and that gun violence rips through the safety just about every day, hurting families, children, the heart, the core of our city. Gun violence is a public health crisis. Reducing gun violence requires constant efforts to make firearms safer, to limit access by people who are most likely to misuse them. It's a bit absurd, isn't it, that here we are in the course of American history and we're actually arguing about whether or not people who beat their spouses, their intimate partners, and their children should have access to guns. And that folks that are mentally ill, that have a history of violence, should have access to weapons. Think about that for just a second. Let that sink in. that we aren't willing to take a stand when there's bipartisan, common sense gun safety laws, things that we can do right now to protect the people in our neighborhoods. And we don't. Even worse, when local officials have the guts to actually take a stand and honor the wishes of the people of their community, the state guts those gun safety laws. If you're not willing to take on this issue, if you don't have the courage to lead, at least get out of the way and let the officials, the moms, the dads, the brothers and sisters, the prosecuting attorneys, law enforcement officials, the opportunity to lead. Making Columbus safer is not an easy task. There are no perfect solutions, but we are committed to taking actions necessary to protect our residents and families, including fighting in court for our right, the people of Columbus's right, to protect themselves and their families. Now for a powerful story and testimony of the importance of gun safety laws and the impact that gun violence has had on her family. Please welcome Celeste LaCour-Bellin, because gun violence is not about a statistic or legislation for her. It's about her family and her story. Please welcome Celeste.
First of all, I'd like to thank Mayor Ginther and his staff for allowing me to speak on a subject that I am very closely connected to. On August the 11th, 2011, I received a call saying that my daughter had been shot. Being 5 minutes away from my home, I got there immediately. I found my home surrounded by police. I went to the first officer and asked where my daughter was, and they said, "We can't tell you right now, but there is someone in our home, in your home, and he's doing a walkthrough." Well, when that officer came out, the first thing he said was to a fellow officer, "Bring the tape." So we all know what that means. It is now designated a crime scene. After a wait of approximately 4.5 hours, I found out that my daughter had been murdered with a gun by her ex-boyfriend. My daughter was 18, he was 19. He shot her 7 times. He put her body in the trunk of his car, drove to where his mother was visiting a friend, threatened to kill himself with the same gun. His mother talked him out of it. He took his mother's car and drove around the Ohio State campus area for 4.5 hours. Now, during that time, I still had not been told that my daughter was dead. They felt they needed to get a handle on him first before they let any of that information come to me. So during those 4.5 hours, I was praying that my daughter was still alive. Well, after we were told what had happened, we found out that his coach had convinced him to come home. He came home and approached the police in a threatening manner, in which they shot and killed him. Now, this young man attended the same school as my daughter and was very popular in his school. He was a track star. He was someone that other children looked up to. But all of a sudden he cracked. The gun he used was not even his. It belonged to his cousin, who had not reported it missing. Now, whether he gave the gun to his cousin or not, we don't know. It was reported missing the day of the shooting. Well, little did I know, after being away from work and everyone under a cloud, I did some research and found out that my daughter was a victim of teen dating violence. Several times during their relationship, I realized that he had verbally abused her. He had never put his hands on her, but he had verbally abused her, to the point that when he asked her to marry him, she refused. And it was that we think caused him to take her life. Now, I've never liked guns. I still don't like guns, no matter who's carrying them. But little did I know that it would come into my home and take the life of my daughter. So I go around and now I speak on teen dating violence all over the state of Ohio and in other states such as New York. I teach the Safe Dates program, and I also teach the counselors and the coaches on the things that they should be teaching in their wellness class to their students in order to prevent this happening to someone else. We all get to choose a purpose in life. Unfortunately, my purpose chose me. So it is my duty to my daughter and to all the other young children out there to learn the signs that I missed as it relates to teen dating violence. Thank you.
That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing it. We have to do better. We have to do better. So at this time, we'll do one-on-one interviews with whomever the press would like to talk to. Thank you.